Happy Pretty Tough Tuesday, and welcome to the Pretty Tough Podcast. I'm your host, Hailey Corona, and the guest that I have on today is very special to my heart. He is a father to a girl wrestler. He is a coach to many girl wrestlers, and he is one of the biggest advocates for girls wrestling that I've ever met in my life. I have on my wonderful father, Billy Cox. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yes.
This is great. This is awesome. I love it.
Well, I'm really excited to talk to you. Obviously, we talk all the time about girls wrestling, but I think that your expertise and knowledge is going to be beneficial for people to hear from because you've not only been an amazing father to me, but also an amazing coach. But before we kind of dive into things, I'm going to ask you the question that I'm going to ask everybody on the podcast. And that is, what is the best piece of advice that you would have for a girl wrestler?
Oh, I think it always comes down to you're enough. You really are enough. There's so many situations of, knowing whether if you've done the sport or you haven't done the sport or whatever background. The question always is, am I enough? And you are most definitely, you're enough to be a wrestler.
I love that. That's really great advice. And I think you and I have both coached so many girls that come from different backgrounds, that have different body styles. I've had girls that are cheerleaders, volleyball players, girls that grew up doing really tough sports. And I think, or even girls that didn't do any sports at all. And they've all benefited from girls wrestling. So I think that's great advice that doesn't matter where you're from, what you look like, you're enough to be a wrestler.
Yeah, most definitely.
I
Most
love it.
definitely.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I want to take it all the way back to early 2000s when I started wrestling. I was 8 years old. And at the time, my brothers were both wrestling, and I was used as a wrestling dummy. So I feel like I remember so many times in the living room, my brothers always, or you being like, Hailey, come over here. We need to use you as a dummy. And I'd be dragged along to all the practices. And then finally, I was sitting at a tournament, and I don't know, you probably remember it a little better than me, but I think I remember asking, I want to try this. Can I jump in and try? And I want to know kind of what your initial thoughts were, and maybe how that's kind of developed over the years of watching me as a wrestler.
Well, I think we actually go back a little further, and maybe you don't remember, was that we went down to Lehigh and we were in with Pioneers Wrestling back then.
Okay.
And I remember you started wrestling a little bit, and then you came to me and you were like, Dad, I like wrestling, but not every day. And so I was like, all right. And so I think we then put you in dance, and
Oh,
and you
yeah.
and you started in dance.
About the
Yeah,
dance
it
life.
wasn't about the dance, and then you did soccer, and we definitely tried to, let you do what you wanted to do. And then
Right.
yeah, we were ironically up at Wasatch where you eventually created these championship teams. Was both your brothers had won some medals, and you just kind of wandered up, and you weren't I don't know where you even came from, what you were doing, but you come up and you saw them both with their medals, and you were like, well, I want a medal. I was like, well, you're going to have to wrestle. And you were like, okay. And I don't know where the part where you just decided, okay, I want to do this.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you were just sitting and you were so bored.
Right.
And then
Probably. I don't know.
you were, you had friends, and you had,
Yeah.
but I remember that night kind of have a conversation with your mom, and your mom was absolutely not. My daughter is not going to wrestle. and I can remember specifically laying in bed and her being very upset that you were
Really?
going to wrestle. And I think she wanted to, you to do all the conventional things that we had done. And it was kind of funny. I was like, all these things for women, and she has an opportunity to do something, and
Right.
you're saying no.
Right.
And she obviously eventually gave in, but
Right. And she's been a great supporter.
and she
Best
has been yeah, in your corner from the minute you said go.
Yep.
She'd been in your corner. Yeah, that's kind of how it kind of took off. And to say it was an uphill battle for most of your career is probably an understatement.
Really?
And I think a lot of it was that, you didn't see as much as probably we saw in a more adult
Sure.
vision.
Right.
You just saw, well, we're just taking you to the tournaments and
Yeah.
you're doing this,
Right.
And so, yeah, there was definitely, it was a struggle. It
Yeah.
was,
So kind of talk about that. Like what were maybe the biggest things that were a struggle for you? Because I know for myself, some of the bigger struggles, at the time I was really the only girl in the state of Utah that was competing. And I know before me there was Candace Workman that,
Mhm.
do you remember how many years before
Yeah,
she
she was about 10 years before you.
Okay.
So there was a fairly big gap of of girl wrestlers. There was some that came in and out, but I think we had a good bad situation. For a couple of coaches, it was really pretty good.
Right.
They're like, oh, hey, let's try this.
Right.
But the bad part was you were really good right off the bat.
Yeah.
Like you weren't like, I mean, it's not that you didn't lose off the bat,
Sure.
but you just weren't the typical stereotypical, well, she's just going to be an easy win.
Yeah.
But I think probably the biggest thing, I think if we sum it up, was there was some egos out there that were just really struggled with girls
Yeah.
wrestling and boys. And I get it now, 20 some odd years into it. I get it. I didn't get it back then because
Right.
my mentality was she just wants to wrestle. Let her wrestle.
Right.
I mean, you're 9 years old. There was
no sort of other intention as a
no, there
9-year-old.
wasn't. Yeah.
Right. I just
No.
wanted to do what my
You just
brothers were
wanted to do
doing.
what,
Wanted to win those medals.
and I think people definitely saw that. I call the boy kaleidoscope, where they just kind of saw it through boys wrestling and with you coming in. And I think there were some things that just, people just couldn't quite get past. And especially I think being in a conservative state that we live
Sure.
in, it was maybe a little bit more of a battle than others, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, it's been a battle across the union. It has been a battle for all girls really at
Yeah.
that stage, because there was no sanctioning,
Right.
at least in our state. I think at that time there was maybe Hawaii and California and Washington, maybe. I
Yeah.
can't remember. There was
Yeah.
very few of it. Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, I think that there has to be those trailblazers in every state, and I feel very grateful that from my perspective, for most of it, there were those times where I maybe felt embarrassed, or maybe not embarrassed is the right word, but I knew that there was a spotlight on me. And so for myself, I always had to go into things, almost on my best behavior, whether it was at practice, tournaments. I knew I was a spectacle. And so I knew in order for me to kind of get validation, positive reinforcement, positive recognition, I needed to go in and prove that I was there for the right reasons. I needed to, try and outwork all the boys at practice so that I would have coaches that were willing to work with me. And then at tournaments, I needed to not be off doing silly things. Like I wasn't there for the attention of the boys. I was there because I wanted to compete. And so I think that there's trailblazers in every state that have, had their hardships and still have hardships.
Yeah.
There are still states that still need development in women's wrestling. And I feel very proud that I was able to be somebody that has helped to pave the way, because now we've been sanctioned. Is it 6 or 7 years now we've been sanctioned?
7, yeah, 7.
Yeah.
Years, yeah.
And to see the growth has been pretty cool, honestly. But I kind of want to go back and I want to ask we talked about the struggles that you had, but maybe what was the biggest thing that you kind of took away from watching me in the sport through the years, kind of going through everything? What was the biggest thing that you took away from it?
Oh, I don't know. Me or you? Like I think,
Both. Let's hear both.
I think for me it really was watching someone overcoming lots of obstacles. I don't think people know a lot about how, you coming up, that you had some OCDs, you had some stuff
Right.
and it was one of those things that wrestling kind of filled that. Right now, I'd say it was a Band-Aid for some issues that we as new parents didn't know, weren't
Right.
aware of. It wasn't talked about. Watching you overcome lots of struggles, and then winning, like the amount of winning that you did. And then it became fun to
Right.
watch, these boys and these coaches, because you were a leg rider and you did a lot of damage, and
It's the hips.
it was the hips, and we taught you young on that. We
Right.
knew it. And I'm kind of grateful I kind of saw that forethought
Yeah.
of really getting where, if you were going to, the equalizer was
Right.
going to be your legs. And then at the end, it was just fun watching them try to out wrestle and out coach you and yell from the side of the mat, what's coming. And then they're throwing their hands in the air because they didn't know what was coming.
Dang it.
So it was, yeah, there was, so my takeaway was just, I think a lot of it was just pride in watching my daughter succeed in something, and with all that, there's good and bad, but I think just overcoming and then becoming who you are, like now, is just so much, like you look back and through the years and just nothing but pride to see, the mom you become, the coach you became, the athlete, all those things I think derive from a lot of those struggles
Right.
that you overcame or you worked through, or there was some tough times in there.
Yeah.
It wasn't all fun and games and stuff. And I think the perspective of it manifested to where you found your place and started looking around and saying, hey, there are eyes on me. Um, Came a little bit later,
Yeah.
especially, what you won your first super state when you were 12, by
Right.
that, and you were pretty mature for your age. It was that
Yeah.
helped too,
Right.
and not that Candace didn't, she definitely paved her way. I just think there was such a big gap, and probably the timing of some YouTube and some, things were start the very beginning of girls wrestling.
Yeah.
And so you could just start to see that tidal wave you were catching, and the rest of the Utah girls, it kind of, that was kind of before that. So
Right.
it probably, there was a gap for paving, and then
Right.
being as successful as you were too,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I kind of want to go back and talk about, at least from my perspective, kind of those struggles that I dealt with too, because that actually is huge. I do think that wrestling was so beneficial for me in becoming the coach. I've been able to coach for a few years now. I'm a mom now, and I feel like all the lessons that I learned from wrestling and that have carried, me through my life have been a huge reason as to who I am, the person that I am today.
Mhm.
But I remember when I did start wrestling that you're absolutely right. I had, I dealt a lot with anxiety. And I remember being, so OCD and anxious that I would go into stores with mom, and, I would always be asking her, mom, like, is there anything on my hands? And she's like, "Hailey, there's not anything on your hands. Why are you asking me this?" And it was because I was so scared I was gonna steal something. I was gonna accidentally steal
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
I don't know if I think a babysitter had put on
Cops.
cop show,
Yeah,
and I was so scared that I was gonna go to
yeah,
jail that
yeah,
these, OCD thoughts and these anxieties kind of, I don't know, took place. And
yeah.
I'm sure there were other things as to why I was anxious, but I even remember crying before, a lot of times before school at night because I was nervous of going to school the next day.
Mm.
I was really nervous about what people would think about me. And so, having those things kind of show up as a young girl, and then having me choose to do a sport like wrestling where it just seems so out of character
Right.
because you're put on a stage in front of people where people are going to be, judging and having thoughts about, what this person is doing. And especially being, one of the only girls in the sport, it is kind of crazy that I decided to do that. But I think it was really therapeutic for me to be able to go out and, to do something that was really challenging, and that it really pushed me to be like, to do something that was scary for me and then kind of work through that and overcome it. I still deal with anxious thoughts, but I think that from wrestling, I've gotten so much better at dealing with anxiety and OCD and not caring so much about what people think of me because of wrestling. So I think that was really cool for me. And I know that, you guys didn't know a whole lot because it was so new. And
Anxiety really wasn't a word. Like,
right,
it wasn't something that you hear about every day, well, she has
right.
anxiety, and we as parents not knowing, I mean, I'll be the first one to admit I made mistakes of how do we deal with this? And yeah, I think a little bit as we stumbled onto this, and
Mhm.
we kind of, and me being the dad I am, I pushed you in the deep water,
Sure.
and so it was sink or swim.
Right.
And
Which is
then
a reason why I think that I did become as successful as I was, or have the success that I did, was from a supportive dad like you that wants to see your children do their best. So,
Mhm.
that's what you do as a coach and a loving father is you throw your children into deep water and you figure out how to help them to swim. And so I don't think
Yeah,
you were wrong
yeah.
in that.
Well, I tell parents all the time, our goal is to kick them out of the nest and let them fly, not
Right.
keep them in the nest.
Right.
And, I think there was just so much other things that kind of went through with the time, but I think the way that you were able to start setting goals. I think that really helped, goal setting, and then we worked, at night. I remember doing where you would do meditation at night, and
Right.
and 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 all positive things, and so yes, a lot of
Affirmations.
affirmations and visualizing and
Yep.
stuff like that, and I think some of that just with luck we happed on it,
Right.
and it was a test. It was definitely a test area because
Right.
I mean, what other girls, I mean, there was girls that were coming in, but
Right.
it was a quick cycle. Like,
Yeah.
and then, and then eventually someone like Sage saw you wrestle and was like,
Yep.
"Hey, I want to be," and then we had Marlon, and we had a couple girls that,
Yep.
ended up just
Falling
kind
into
of
it.
kind of following and really taking your example, because every
Right.
time we'd go on trips, you were almost the patriarch of the wrestling van,
Yeah.
and so
I have
you
some
know?
good stories with them. I'll have to
Yeah.
have
Oh
them
yeah.
on and tell some
Yeah.
of those stories,
I
but
just know nobody talked to you while we were cutting weight. Going
yeah.
that way was it was a quiet trip when we were going to
Yeah, that
nationals.
is true. Yep, had the headphones
Had the
on.
headphones, don't talk, don't look,
Yep,
don't yeah.
yep.
Yeah,
No, I was pretty hangry, pretty
pretty hangry,
hangry.
zero patience. Yeah,
Yep.
even for me.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have a little bit more understanding now towards my girls when we would go on these long trips. I'm driving them across the country to Fargo
Oh
and
yeah.
folk style nationals, and they're getting a little hangry, little attitude with me, and I had to kind of step back and remember, I did this to my parents and my
Yeah.
coaches, and it's just a normal teenage girl thing they kind of have to work through, but I
Yeah.
appreciate the patience that
Yeah.
you had with
I
me
did
and
drive Miss Daisy a
you
lot where we were driving across the country and
did.
you were in the back seat and
Yep.
I was in the front
Yep.
and
But those are some of my favorite
yeah,
memories,
they were mine.
We had great conversations and I think that
Lots of interviews.
lots of
Lots of
interviews. Yep.
interviews, yeah.
Yep. And I think that probably not a lot of fathers and daughters get to bond in that, they don't have that relationship where, daughter is maybe doing ballet or maybe doing something that a father can't relate to. So it
Definitely a
was special.
connection. Yeah,
Yeah, it was
yeah,
very special. And
definitely a
I kind
connection.
of want to go back and talk about you said, there were lots of things that you guys didn't know because
Mhm.
like you said, YouTube kind of social media was maybe just starting to get big.
Just starting, yeah.
So you weren't really able to look up these resources.
Yeah.
And still, there's not a ton of great resources on girls wrestling, which is why I'm wanting to do this podcast.
Yeah.
But I want you to kind of speak on what were some things that maybe as a coach and a parent, now that you've kind of seen the development of the sport, how my life kind of played out, what would you go back and do differently as number one, a dad of a girl in the sport? And then maybe as a coach too, but let's start with a dad. What would you go back and do different?
Well, and this may sound a little bit harsh, but I'd never coach your own child. It just, every parent thinks they can coach their own daughter
Yeah,
or their own child, and I think there's a 1% people that can.
right.
I think one of the reasons is because it's, especially with girls, it's tone,
Sure.
and
Yep.
they know every facial expression. You can be saying, "Oh, good job," but the face is saying something totally different, right?
Right.
And so I think it's a lot better. And I wish I could have been that parent that I was sit in the stands and just cheer,
Right.
but I wasn't built that way.
Not
I
quite.
had to be on the floor. I had to be the one that was yelling,
Yep.
stuff like that. But that would probably be my first thing is don't coach your own kid.
Yeah.
I mean, really find somebody that you support. Don't be afraid to look. Don't be afraid to change. Don't be
Sure.
afraid to, if you have one club, don't be afraid to change. I'm not talking about changing every week.
Yeah.
Let it evolve, see where it's going. And
Right.
then, because we did, we bounced around and some
Right.
of it was just doing that, some coaches just couldn't handle having a girl in the room,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it wasn't until we went to champions. And I think you set this kind of the stage because parents and kids would walk in and all of a sudden they'd see you and they'd look around like there's a girl in here.
Yeah. Right.
And then pretty soon the culture became such a norm
Right.
that you had Sage and you had Abby, you had a bunch Marlon, you had a bunch of girls in there that pretty soon they just walked in and they just knew, hey, you're going to end up wrestling a girl.
Right. I love that advice because I think it's really hard as I'm sure as a parent now that I have, my own little guy.
Yeah.
He's still really little, but
Yeah.
the love that you have for, your children and just wanting them to have success and wanting them to do good. But I do remember us in high school butting heads at times.
Yeah. I got fired more time for being your coach.
Yeah.
Like I've worked at the same job for 37 years and you probably fired me at least 5 times a year,
I mean, that is
Yeah.
true. And I think that
But what was great is you would fire me, but if something happened, you were always you still always kind of needed that dad,
oh yeah,
and I wish I could have, like, what you don't know,
right.
right? And, kind of back to the coaching thing, there's a lot of things I would probably, knowing now, there was a lot of things I would have done a lot different.
Yeah.
I do think, kind of going back to that, is I think it used to be a taboo, but I think getting a sports psychologist is super helpful.
Yeah.
I wish we had more female sports in that department that we
Yeah.
could talk to because and not to take away, there's some great mental
Oh, sure.
coaches from men and stuff like that, but I think there's a little different aspect when you have females helping other females.
Yep.
I think you do a great job with, that's why your teams were so good. You were able to kind of make that little different connection.
Sure.
I think, we talked to Marlon about doing, I think there's definitely some areas where girls could really do really well in that world of just being a kind of a sports psychologist.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
wish we could see more of that.
Absolutely.
Especially if you think your child's going to be an elite athlete,
Right.
and there's and that's the other thing is, the athleticism that's coming out. I just went to women's nationals, went to the US Open,
Yep.
and in the early days, if you were athletic, just purely athletic, you didn't have to know enough. You could go far, right? Now, man, they are throwing bombs.
It's crazy.
Oh, it's crazy. It's like that US Open, watching the girls, it was
Oh my
just
gosh,
like
yeah.
it's so, for me, it just like it fills me with pride to see what the level of female wrestling has got to,
Absolutely.
and just to have, I had one of my youth go down there, and she was just looking around like, "Oh my gosh, look how good these,"
Right.
So
Yeah.
that I think I think training would be a little bit different too, but yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And I think too, like, I think there's still awesome girls that are able to hop in at the high school level,
Oh, yes.
and can do great, in the state. And, we're seeing, as we were both, or I just stepped down as a coach, but you're still coaching in
Mhm.
Utah. And,
Yeah.
um, you know, always trying to recruit girls and get any girl that is, just willing to do the sport. They don't have to be athletes, and they can still step in and have success.
Yeah.
I think it depends on their commitment level, their, somewhat to do with their abilities,
Yeah, yeah.
and what they're wanting to do outside of the sport too, because it can't just be practice time where you're getting better. Preach a lot about that. Like, you guys got to be doing things outside of
Mhm.
wrestling practice if
Yeah,
you want to get good at
yeah.
wrestling. Um,
And I think that sometimes comes down to parenting too.
for sure.
We definitely are kind of in a place, because I go in PE classes where we have so many kids, especially females, that aren't playing any sports at all,
Right.
and so I really want to connect with a lot of those that saying, hey, you have an avenue here that's going to improve your life,
Yeah.
not only for safety,
Right.
but you have the ability to go to college. You have
Hmm.
ability to get paid for, and you don't, like, we have enough colleges that are calling now that you don't even have to have been a state champion. Like, you just have to be someone that wants to show up. And so it goes back to the very first question. You're enough.
Right.
Like, even if you start, I've had lots of girls that started late, juniors, and they end up going and doing well at college.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so I think that window changes a little bit.
Right.
Does it help if you start wrestling at 9?
Yeah.
Well, of course it did. That's
Right.
any sport, right?
Right.
But it doesn't equate to, this is where I think your window just shifts a little bit.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so once that window shifts, then you figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And so
And I think too, so, like, kind of going back to that, the national level, you're seeing, like, you're talking about going to women's nationals, and you see these young girls that are now coming and winning the US Open, that are high schoolers,
yeah, yeah.
that, are beating these high level women that are senior level ladies that have been putting in lots of time, and they're still fantastic. But I think that you're going to see these girls that are starting at a young age and seeing how the sport is developed, and kind of having a lot more women to look up to, seeing what possibilities are there for them.
Mhm.
I think you're going to continue to see the growth of girls wrestling, but also that talent level. I think for a while we've had this these high level women, that there's been a small pool of them, that are, those really top notch, super impressive. Not that there's not great, fantastic pro wrestlers, but there was a wider gap between,
Oh, yeah.
those girls that still kind of had a lot more, experience they needed,
Mhm.
whether they started in high school or maybe a little bit, didn't have as much experience. And I think as we kind of see things continue to progress, that those girls that are now starting real young, I mean, by the time, 10 years from now, I think you're going to see girls wrestling looking a lot different.
Well, and
Um,
I think the other thing is we're starting to see girls that have never wrestled a boy.
right?
Like,
Crazy.
the parents are like, "You're not wrestling a boy."
Yeah.
And so they've made their success being in girls' rooms.
Yeah,
Where
absolutely.
before you wrestled 3 years, 4 years before you ever wrestled a girl,
Right.
like in a live match, like a
Right.
competition match. And,
I was
um
more nervous to wrestle a girl than
oh,
I
yeah.
was to
I
wrestle
remember
boys.
you come off, you were like, "That was weird."
Yeah.
Like, what?
They wrestle
They
different.
did.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
different.
You
Yeah.
try to throw and I think you went right to your back and you looked
Yeah.
over at me like, what happened?
What's
And
that?
yeah, so it was, yeah. And where I think now, much like when you're Olympic Training Center, I think now you got like me, when the boys come in or we get certain males to come in and kids, it's like you actually have a specific, like, we need to work on defense of a high crotch, or we need
Right.
a defense on getting off the bottom or
Right.
something like that. Now that they're coming in and it's just not a free for all wrestling,
Right.
because
Yeah.
after a certain age, you're just getting beat up on, right?
Sure.
It's not helping, it's not benefiting, I don't
Right.
think, but how we work together.
Yeah.
There's successful programs that have the girls wrestling and the boys
Yep.
programs. There's nothing, I don't think, really wrong with that.
Yep.
But I do think that we work smarter, not harder,
Yeah.
in those kind of aspects. And I
Right.
think you're starting to see it. You're starting to see it come up a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so, and then on top of that, we're starting to see this Olympic cycle of these incredible athletes turning into moms,
Right.
wives,
So cool.
and doing such great things, saying, "Hey, look at I'm a mom, I was an Olympian, or I was this, and now I'm helping the next generation come up."
Yeah.
It's not like just walk away and
I think that's going to be huge for the continued growth of girls wrestling because I mean, once you have these high level women that do stop competing and do decide they want to give back to the sport,
yeah,
you're going to have so many more college programs. You're going to have so many more successful high school programs.
yeah,
And even like girls that maybe don't go on to wrestle in college or don't go on to, achieve these big Olympic aspirations that are still going to be awesome, high school or youth coaches and,
yeah.
or, mental health specialists or
Or just
whatever it
plain
is.
advocates.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And so I think that as the sport continues to grow, it's going to be really cool to see those high level women, but just women in general, start to give back to the sport. And I think it's just going to continue to be a really cool process to see how it continues to go on the uphill. But yeah, I think that the girls wrestling that we saw back in the 2000s, where we went to women's nationals and there was what, maybe 300
yeah.
girls?
We went to Florida, and I remember there was 34 girls.
34?
There was 34
You're
girls. I know.
kidding.
I'm
That's
pretty sure there was
crazy.
34. And then 2 years later, we went to folk style nationals,
Uh-huh.
and there was 300.
Wow.
And that was kind of the start of body bar, and then we went
Yep.
to folk style, and then when it got to Texas, then it
Yep.
was, because I think about that time it had moved to Texas, but
I think so, yeah.
and then we started to see the explosion,
Right.
and so we definitely saw it, and I think that's where my start of really being an advocate started, was going there and like seeing it, like just
Yeah.
even if there was not that many girls, but just seeing it and going, "Oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
This is going to be big,"
Yeah.
and so
That's cool that you got to kind of be one of the first.
yeah,
I know there's a lot of other people that probably had that same train of
yeah,
thought of
oh
just
yeah,
like, wow, seeing the vision. This is going to be big. This
yeah.
is important. This isn't just this
Yeah, and
isn't
I'm still friends with a lot of dads I met there, right?
really.
We went, and then we go to Oklahoma, and Rana and all those parents, I
Yeah,
mean, that we're still friends today. Like, we still
absolutely.
Facebook friends, and
So
so
cool.
it is cool because we got to see the start of it, and,
Yeah.
for some of us got to actually be part of the push.
Yeah. Well, so talking about the push, I remember as I think it was probably once I got closer into high school, maybe middle school, where I remember you were always trying to pull in lots of different girls. I mean, we would be really anywhere and you saw any girl and you would
I'm
go
still,
up
yeah,
and you're
still
still the
recruiting.
same way.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
still the same way, but just talking to girls and asking them if they wanted to come to our practices.
yeah,
And you were the start of what you would call a national team here in Utah before there was an actual position for it, before it was an actual thing.
yeah,
Because, you would pack up vans and you would take us all over the country. And any girl that was willing, we were going to Fargo, we were going to all these big places. And,
yeah.
that stands out to me as a person. And I think what helped me want to get into coaching was seeing you be such an awesome coach and mentor to not only me, but also to these other girls. And I do think you saying that, being a coach and a dad, if you can not be both, I think I totally agree with. But I do think that you learned a lot from it. And I
Oh yeah,
think that, I don't think that I'm scarred from it. I think that I turned out to be okay. And
in spite of your dad,
in spite, in
in
spite.
spite, yeah,
But I think it was really cool to just kind of see, that you were willing to take all these girls around. And probably by the time high school came around, we had a little bit of a bigger room. you remember about how many girls we started to have and kind of how those
Yeah, that was,
practices
well, the
developed?
Maple Mountain we had, well, there at Champions, remember the junior high? I think you just started high school, or maybe you were a sophomore right before you went to the OTC. I think we had 15 girls,
Yeah, which is
and
huge going from
yeah,
me to 15.
yeah, and it
Yeah,
still wasn't like they still hadn't talked really about sanctioning or anything like that, but that
yeah,
was, yeah, it was one of those things too that, I was dialing the night before we would leave because I had a van and
right.
we'd have a mom or someone like that we were going with, and I would show up at my house at 8 o'clock, and
Yep,
then we'd have people from Ogden, we'd have, all sorts, and then at 8 o'clock there would be a van full of girls,
yep.
and we'd take off, and I remember one year we had rooms reserved in Oklahoma City, and was it? Yeah, it's for Oklahoma City, and we had more girls than we thought we were going to. So I ended up sleeping in the van for the next couple of days, and my no good deed goes unpunished. I remember my van got keyed,
Oh
and
my
so
gosh.
I ended up having to pay extra for that,
Dang
and
it.
and then there was the story with Marlon and Sage when Sage, vomited at the restaurant, and so
All over
all
the
over the guy with the brand new snakeskin boots, and
Yep,
so that
yep,
was. But I really felt that it was a place that we needed to start seeing a bigger picture
yeah,
and getting these girls that were up and coming to at least see it,
right,
now whether they became successful or not, it
yeah,
was like, hey, this is coming. I mean, look what these other states are doing.
right.
And I think the more that we dipped our toes in the water, that the more that it ended up, more parents saw it, more parents that came, and
Y
it kind of started from there. I think more
yeah,
more parents were talking to coaches, more coaches were starting to see it, and but
yeah.
yeah, it was.
Yeah, it's been crazy to just, see that and see how for me it was really cool just that I think that you were a huge part of girls wrestling being sanctioned in Utah. And I know there's been so many other people that have helped with it, but going from Candace before me and then Sage and Marlon and then building it up and making it big enough to where
Yeah,
we could sanction it and then, from whether it was us 15 and kind of having other girls at tournaments in the stands seeing, hey, that girl's doing it. I want to try it too. And just being able to, be a part of that was really cool. But I think that was a huge, that was you that really helped in. And again, there's other people along the way, of course, but
mhm,
um, I'm very grateful for you and your efforts in helping to get Utah sanctioned as a sport. And then you went on to start a high school program the first year that it was sanctioned at
yeah,
Maple Mountain.
yeah,
You guys were state champs your first year.
yeah,
And then I then took over the program that following year because you were moving down here to
yeah,
Nephi.
start this program.
Yep,
Yeah,
starting the Juab girls wrestling program,
yeah.
and then with your team that you had started, I won state with them
Yeah,
that
but that,
following year.
I think that's funny that, a lot of us, well, you won because, Bill had his team
Oh,
right
yeah.
there. You had 3 of my girls.
Right.
Like, there was that 3 did not win the state title. That
Sure.
was you. That was all you, because I think, you know, I remember us talking before, between divisionals and state, and you were just like, "My girls have no grit." Like, you were like, because I think that's one of the things that you could say, girls could give you gruff or
Right.
whatever, or beef, and you'd look at them like, "Listen, I've been there, done
Right.
that, and you're not even,
Yeah, you're not even touching
you're
what I
not
had to
even
go
touching
through.
what has
Yeah.
to, so get back to wrestling,
Right, exactly.
And I remember you just saying there wasn't grit, and then all of a sudden you're like, I remember like the next day you called me, you're like, I'm going to the Menlo Open, and you hadn't wrestled for a year and
Oh,
a half,
yeah.
and then you went down there, and I think you ended up taking fourth down there. I remember
Yeah,
you were watching a video, and you got put on your back,
I
and you
did.
fought off your back, and then um,
And my mindset, I remember that because that's crazy that it was right during the season. I
yeah,
forgot
yeah, it
about that.
was, yeah,
But yeah, because I had wrestled at McKendree
yeah,
and then I had taken some time off and then I'd started coaching, but I wanted to get back into competing. And I remember at that tournament, yeah, it was my first time competing in a
oh
while
yeah,
and I got put to my back and I'm just thinking in my head all the times that I'd yelled at the girls on their back, like,
yeah,
you better do whatever it takes to get off your back and I don't want to see you getting pinned and
yeah,
making them run sprints every time, like
oh
all the
yeah,
things. And so when I got put to my back, I was like, oh my gosh, if I get pinned,
yeah,
I would
yeah.
not hear the end of it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that definitely made me
Yeah.
fight like crazy to get off my back.
Yeah.
And luckily I didn't get pinned that match.
Well, you know what's funny is, yeah, you came back and you had taken like third at divisionals. Like you weren't even
Our
talked about.
team, yeah, our
Your team
team,
is
yeah.
taking third at divisionals, and you guys weren't even in the conversation. Like they
No.
were like, it's
Oh yeah.
and then you come and just walked away. Like you put like what, 7 in
We
the
put
finals?
6 into the
Yeah,
finals.
6 in the
Yeah.
finals of girls that just gritted it out.
Right. Brand new
so,
wrestlers. I had a
brand new.
foreign exchange
Oh yeah,
student we
foreign
put into like
exchange
the
too. Yeah.
semis, which
Oh
that
yeah.
was crazy.
Yeah.
Because beginning to wrestle, she was like, this is weird. I don't even like touching people.
Yeah.
And she went into the semis.
Oh yeah.
Of course, it was its second year of being sanctioned, so it was still new.
But there were still girls that had been wrestling for quite a while. It wasn't like
Yeah.
it was an easy division too,
Right. Yeah.
and they had divided it by then,
Yep.
and so it was,
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was some fun memories, and then from then I got to go on and start the program at Wasatch,
Yeah.
and that's been really fun.
That was
to
kind of
coach
one of
there.
those, I always say that was the Italian deal, one of those deals you couldn't pass up,
That's true.
which
Yep.
is, which I say all the time is like they said, "Hey, we want to talk to you." He says, "Well, I'm going to be wrestling this weekend." And they're
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, funny. So we're going to
At
be
the
down there
Open.
at
At the
the
US
Open, the US
yeah.
Open." Yeah. And you're like, "Well, I'm going to be down there wrestling." And who's the first one that comes up and talk to you? Kale Sanderson.
Oh yeah. Was it Kel? Was it Kel or was it? I'm trying to remember. I think it was no, it was the boys' head coach. It was Cam Day.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
Cam Day, and it was their whole coaching staff, the boys' coaching staff, and it was their
Somewhere in there, Kale talked to you.
It was at a tournament. It was at
Yeah.
a tournament, I think World Team Trials, where I had seen him and I had introduced myself and told him
that's
that I
right,
was going to be starting the program at Wasatch, which was his alma mater where he went to high school. And he was really kind about it. It was kind of in passing, but that was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, they watched me, and it was really cool because they offered me a teaching position, which was pretty crazy just because, I kind of told them, hey, like I'm not going to move up to Heber City, Utah, which is, close to Park City, very expensive. And I was like, I can't move up to it for like a little coaching stipend. I think it's cool you guys are wanting to start girls wrestling, and very conservative community. I honestly didn't even think that they would be, a town that would want to get girls wrestling. So it was really kind of surprising. But when they had talked to me and just kind of explained their vision to me of, hey, we're going to get you a PE coaching position. You don't have your degree, but we're going to work with you so that you can start working towards getting your degree. And so, yeah, it really was a deal I couldn't pass up of, I'm going to be in the school. I can recruit girls for my PE classes.
Boy, did you ever. Yeah, that first year you had what, 40 girls?
Yeah, I had 40 girls off the bat, and took a second. That first year we weren't, amazing off the bat.
Yeah, everybody was brand new.
Yeah, it was brand new, and that was challenging in and of itself to be able to take a room full of 40 girls that have never wrestled before.
It's an eye-opening. I mean, when you start a program, because this is, 2 or 3 different programs I've helped start, and
Right.
it's like, you really fall back. Like you think, especially if you've been wrestling for so long, you're like, why would you move that way? Like, where are you?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Right. And you really have to reel in your ego.
Yeah.
And go, okay.
Yep.
And then you start talking to them. And I say it all the time that we start coaching these girls like they're blind. Really, like you have to be very specific.
Yeah.
Left hand here, grab her right hand with your right hand.
Right.
Things like that.
And they're so detail oriented.
Oh yeah,
these
so
girls.
detailed.
They need to know
everything.
everything. Yep.
And more questions than you can count.
Yeah. But it's good. It's great that they're thinking things through, and they want to know everything. And for you, where you have started so many programs and helped to grow the state and get it sanctioned, for you, like, what would you say is the biggest thing that other, coaches, parents, like, what could we be doing to help to continue to grow the sport? I know you have lots of thoughts on this, so maybe tell me your thoughts.
Well, I think one of the things that I'm seeing is that very much that we need to get rid of our egos.
Yeah.
Especially when in a girl's room. And I make the joke that nothing ruins my ego, like walking in a room, the girls will, who cut your hair? Like
they're just roasting you.
Yeah, they're roasting me. Like, does your barber have a job? Like, it's like,
why are you wearing that?
Yeah, what are you wearing? Are those new shoes? Like, you know what I wear every day.
Right.
I have to literally make sure I'm not wearing the same clothes twice. Even if I wash them, I'm like, oh
they'll
no,
pick you apart.
Oh, they will, which is good. It forms a trust.
Oh,
but
sure.
I think, and then learning the evolution, like girls wrestling that was even 5 years ago is
Right.
not even close to what we're doing now. The moves
Absolutely.
we're doing, the flexibility, working around flexibility,
Yeah.
we've changed, at least in my room, we've changed a lot of things of how we do things to take some flexibility out
Right.
of it. Girls are insanely flexible. And then the obvious thing, tone. You just have to have a different tone. Now,
Yeah.
occasionally you'll get, I have one girl on my team that, yeah,
You can be
I can
straightforward.
be she, wants me to be
Sure.
straightforward. There is no she
She
does
doesn't
not
want you to
want she doesn't
sugarcoat
want
it.
any to sugarcoat it, and
Yeah.
she comes from a family that has all brothers, and so she's the only girl, and that's all
Right.
she's had, right?
Makes sense.
And then there's some that you really have to work around, um, the questions in their own mind,
Yeah.
right? And try to help them, and I've got really to the point where, every day I talk about that the scoreboard is not your self-worth. Don't put
Yeah.
your self-worth in those numbers.
Right.
Um, and especially girls, like our ascent plan is a lot different on some girls than others. We're still figuring
When
out.
you say ascent plan, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, like, where do they wanna go? Like, you
Right.
have girls that come in and they just wanna wrestle for 3 months.
Sure.
That ascent plan of where they're gonna be is just they just wanna be how can we make them good in 3 months?
Yeah.
And then I have girls like Andy and Addie and, a couple of my superstars that they're going to college, and
Right.
this is what they wanna do. So their
Right.
ascent plan of what we're going to do, what tournaments we're gonna go to, is a lot different.
Yeah.
I still have really got away from really talking about wins.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't I think the sport in itself is hard enough. Yeah, everybody wants to win, but I think it's what you're getting out of the sport. At the end of the day, it's just a game.
Yeah.
And I'm just coaching a game. And if I start putting more pressure than girls already put on themselves, I'm probably doing a disservice to them. So a
100%.
lot of it is just trying to figure out and I say it's the light switch at night. Like, I know where my light switch is when I get up in the middle of the night, but I'm still looking for it,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm trying to find where every girl's light switch is, where they recognize what wrestling is doing for them, where they want to be,
Yeah.
even the basic wrestling skills, and so when you have so many different walks of life coming in your room. And
Mhm.
so you're constantly adjusting.
Yeah.
It's not a cookie cutter approach. And
No.
I think I do see a lot of coaches that have this cookie cutter approach.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we're pretty successful. Part of it is we're getting a little bit of collateral damage because we're still fairly new, that we have a lot of coaches that never wrestled.
Yep.
We have moms that never wrestled, and that is great. Like, I love that. I'm a huge advocate. Like, my assistants, none of my assistants through the years, female assistants, have ever wrestled, and
Yeah.
they've turned into fabulous coaches.
Right.
Like, I trust them more than some of the male coaches out there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I think that's a big thing, is just working with that.
Putting your ego aside.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's huge too, because I noticed that too. Having coached in Utah over the past couple of years, as I am grateful that there are people that are willing to step in and to coach girls. But you do see a lot that, weren't the greatest wrestlers. Maybe they were JV level high school wrestlers. Maybe they're just dads or moms of girls that, want to wrestle and there's nobody else that's going to step in. And I think that it's everybody's responsibility to continue to learn. I just talked with Geneva Gray on the podcast recently, and she is an excellent example of continuing to learn. And she goes to, she listens to the referee like conferences and learns
Mhm.
from, scoring, and scoring is continuing to evolve. How you
Yeah.
score is continuing to evolve. And even, yeah, I just think that it's our job as coaches to not be so one track minded that because this worked for me, because this worked for, my kid, that this is going to work for everybody
And
else.
the 1983 technique doesn't
Right.
work
It
anymore.
doesn't.
Yeah.
And things are evolving, and you see that, at women's nationals, you see the evolution of women's wrestling happening. And I think that if you're not willing to get on the train of continuing to learn and continuing to grow as a coach, and then also as an athlete, of, things have to continue to evolve and you have to continue to make adjustments, then the train's going to pass you by a little bit.
You definitely have to educate yourself. I mean, that's one of the
Mhm.
reasons, we go to women's nationals and all that. Like, yeah, we want to go see have our athletes be successful, right?
Right.
But for me, that's a training ground for me too. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going there seeing what am I missing? What am I losing? What am I like what do I need to learn?
Yeah.
And for me, I'm making a lot of connections with, Kevin Black and, you know, just these other club coaches,
Yeah.
that are having successful programs, and I'm
Right.
picking their brain too. Like
Yeah.
I want my girls to have the vision that they can be a world champion.
I love
And
that.
whether they can be a world champion, and maybe that's not physically a world champion, but as when they wake up, they're training like a world champion. They're
Yeah.
thinking like a world champion. And I try to get all of them to put something up on the wall that says I'm a world champion. So
Right.
they're visualizing, they're saying they get up instead of doing something and making a bad decision, because
Yeah.
they're going to be in every girl's going to be in one or multiple situations that I'm hoping they make a good decision,
Yeah. Right.
and hopefully if we can continue to say, hey, I'm a world champion, maybe they take that in situations that would scare parents,
Sure.
scare coaches, scare
Yeah.
teachers, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and maybe when they start doing, whether it's just homework or stuff or grades. I mean, that's
Right.
the other thing is, the great thing about sports, it holds you accountable, at least in high school. Like you have to have a
Absolutely.
certain grades. I have lots of girls that just have come through the program that parents are like, she struggles in school. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden they start wrestling, and all of a sudden they found a family.
Yeah.
Now you have girls that are willing to help,
Right. Yep.
we've won, well, 2 years in a row, we've won the, academic
Yeah.
state championship.
Which
So
is really commendable.
we've been pretty blessed to have
Yeah.
some smart girls on our
Right.
team,
It's
right?
so
And
cool.
so when girls struggle, it's like, hey, look at this girl's really good at math. This
Yep.
girl's really good at English. We have so many of that, and then
Right.
they really start helping each other, and that rising tide raises all ships.
Oh yeah.
Whether it's the wrestling or the academics or what us as coaches, because I know you're pretty you're doing and you're acting like this. Like
Right.
you're still being, and I talk about that just like you do, is like people still want us to lose. People still want us to fail.
Yeah.
And we have to realize that people are watching us all the time.
Right.
And whether it's the people in the stands
Yeah.
or the little girl at the side of the mat, we're being
Right.
watched.
Yep.
And how you act is
It
huge,
is.
right? And
Yep.
hopefully when we get that across to these girls, they're carrying themselves at a higher level.
Oh yeah.
And then it leads into relationships,
Right.
and stuff like that. And hopefully you
Having a
know,
high standard.
having just really a high standard,
Yeah.
because if you're going to be successful in wrestling, you have to have a certain high standard,
Oh,
whether
100%.
that's showing up every day, whether that's, whatever commitment level. If you don't have a high standard in anything, you're just not going to be super successful.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so,
I
yeah,
think that it trickles into everything.
yes.
Like I think for
How you
me,
do anything is how
yeah,
you do everything,
it
right?
is.
Yeah.
And I think that was with my teams over the past couple of years because, once I got up to Wasatch, went on and won state back to back with my program. We took second this past year. And so I think both of us, you've had programs that they've been top 3 for the past couple of years. And I mean, we've had some really awesome programs. And so I think that, we kind of know what we're talking about and having a high standard. And I would always tell my girls, like, you need to not care about what people think about you, number one. Like, we don't want to do everything with this fear of what people are thinking about us, because you need to just you need to believe in yourself enough and know who you are enough to not
So
care when they're
individuality.
right,
Yeah.
not care about naysayers. But also it is still new and we do still have eyes on us. And so I mean, I remember maybe it was 2 years ago now, having a duel where we were right before state. I remember telling you about this, and my girls, we showed up. It was our last duel of the season, and they were just messing around. Like, and I was so frustrated with them. We were, messing around with the boys team. We were doing, cartwheels on the mats and not warming up and just doing silly things that my team wouldn't normally do. We show up and we take care of business. And
Yeah.
so I remember just kind of chewing them out. And I remember that next day at practice, like they knew that they were in trouble.
They were in trouble. Yeah.
And I remember they were just waiting silent on the wall for me when I got into practice. And I was like, look, I love you guys. I want to see you guys do your best. But I'm disappointed. That's not how my program should represent us,
Yeah.
because my goal as a coach is when we show up to things, like we're the gold standard of, like, this is what women's wrestling can be. And when we show up, we're gonna look put together. we're going to keep our singlet straps up. We're not going to have anybody question, why girls wrestling shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Not that singlet straps has a whole lot to do with that, but just
It's part of it.
right. Like we're going to show up, we're going to look the part. We're going
Look
to be
professional.
respectful, professional. We're not going to have anybody in the stands have any reason to be like, those girls shouldn't be out there. And so that was kind of my talk with them of just like, that was not what you guys showed up and did last night.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed in that. And then I remember I think I said something along the lines of, I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to work hard today. And that was one of the hardest practices they ever had. And I remember after that, it completely changed the dynamic
Yeah.
for us to go on and win state because it completely changed their focus for the next couple of weeks. And yeah, I just think across the board, if we get as coaches can have a high standard where I think right now where we're still trying to grow girls wrestling, that I think there's a fear of scaring girls off with a high standard. And I think that you're actually doing girls a disservice by not having a high standard. And I think that if you're, just going to let the girls come in and do whatever they want and act however they want and not be disciplined and not be held responsible, then you're not going to have successful programs and you're not helping those girls. And so I think you've done a fantastic job of having a high standard and holding these girls accountable and helping them to in any walk of life that they've had, whether it is just 3 months in the room, whether it is they want to go on for college, you've been an excellent resource for them in being able to help them in whatever that they want to do. And I just think I applaud you for being an awesome coach and an awesome advocate. And I want to know, what is it about girls wrestling that's kept you coming back year after year? I mean, I'm no longer competing. I of course know why I want to continue helping girls wrestling, but why is it that you that loves golfing, that has, a family and other things that you could be doing, you work full time, why do you spend so much time trying to advocate and help grow wrestlers?
Oh, wow. I think there's a lot that goes into it, and I probably need a couch sometimes for that.
Some
There's
therapy.
some therapy. There is definitely some of that.
Maybe you need to reel it back sometimes.
Maybe I do. I do. I think it's there's a movie where there's a thing I saw on Instagram where the guy goes, "It's a hook."
Yeah.
That can't and I it is. It's a hook for me.
Right.
And one of the hooks is just seeing girls succeed. Having a daughter, I see my daughter in every girl that comes in the room of who the one I want to be successful. We have so many girls that come in our room that need a father figure.
Right.
And it's
or somebody to care about
or
them,
someone to care
even
about
if
them.
it's not a father
Yeah,
figure.
even if it's father figure,
Right.
my assistants, my coaching staff, it's just like and with the different personalities, they can, have one that fits theirs,
Yeah.
but, it definitely fills a purpose for me that I don't know, it's one that definitely fills something that I can't explain, and I have all the highs and lows.
Sure.
Like, I've had some times where I've really felt really low.
Yeah.
Usually always kinda has to do with parents, but
Right.
really where I've like, "I don't know if I'm good enough to do this,
Yeah.
or do I wanna keep doing it?"
Right.
Having girls, I've had some that's been really dedicated, and I think that's kind of that motor. If you have girls that are really dedicated and they continue to show up all the time,
Yeah.
it kinda keeps that motor going.
Yeah.
But when you get a gap, of girls that or athletes that don't, it starts to really wear on you because
Yeah.
you put so much time and
Right.
effort and, I do think that the 3-month wrestlers are hard. They're
Yeah,
hard,
can be.
because
Yeah.
you put so much time in those months to make them, and then they turn around and just walk away.
Yeah. Right.
It's
Because we're
not.
year-round coaches.
Yeah.
Year-round
Yeah, and
coaches.
I'm definitely
I
that,
mean,
yeah.
we're available to talk whenever they need. Like,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
but that gratifying thing of like, knowing that we're giving our 110% best, even if they're not going to give their 110% best, but it is really awesome when you do get those athletes that match that. And those are the ones that, yeah, like they'd run through a door for you and you'd
Yeah.
run through or a wall for them.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and so it's really awesome when you get those type of athletes that you can really connect with. And
Yeah.
one thing that I love about kind of everything that I've heard from you today is just as a coach, you have to continually progress, continually get better. And for you, I think it's just been, a continual challenge where you are figuring out how can I get better as a coach, looking in the mirror and figuring out where are my downfalls of where are my weaknesses as a coach and
Yeah.
how can I get better, so that I can help you
Definitely,
to reach your
definitely something
best.
at the end of folk style season. I look at myself a lot and I'm like, did I get better?
Right.
Was I the coach that I want to be?
Yeah.
You know, did I get to the girls to the level? What's working, what's not?
Right.
And every year as your teams get better, you take some things in, you put some things out. You're kind of doing this constant mixing. It's
Right.
almost like, I like the analogy about a puzzle, right? We got this puzzle, and some days we see the whole picture, but we don't have all the pieces.
Yeah.
Some days we have all the pieces, but we don't know what the picture looks like, right?
Right.
And sometimes you you see it all and you're like, oh yeah, this is, and then there's some that you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. And but that's, yeah, that when it comes down to it, I think it's just one thing is, I really think coaches don't look at it enough. They
Yeah.
don't evaluate themselves. That ego that I'm good enough,
Right.
and especially with the resources we have now,
Yeah.
there's a lot of really good resources out there.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
I think continual evaluation is crucial as a coach.
yes, most
And
definitely.
so we've got just a few minutes left. So I kind of wanted to end. I have two questions. The first one is just kind of swinging back to, as a parent, what would you say is the biggest piece of advice that you could give to a parent in supporting their daughter? I mean, because you've been on both sides, parent and coach.
Yeah.
So you've kind of seen, what would you want from a parent as a coach? But also what has worked as a parent.
Yeah.
So what would you suggest for parents of pro wrestlers?
Well, I don't think there's a right answer.
Yep.
I think because of personalities and environments and stuff like that, I think support is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Um, and then asking lots of questions, being as a parent, being able to, you know, show up for your child. It really means something. I say all the time, and this kind of goes to parents, that I can talk a crazy parent or an over the top parent from caring as much about winning and caring less about winning than I can a parent that doesn't care to care more about winning.
Mm,
And so it's one of those things that for me, the perfect parent is one that's supportive, one that shows up, you know, one that wants to be involved.
yeah.
Um, and and then I think if the child sees that,
Right.
you know, there's a lot of stuff that goes with parent and child dynamics, but really when it comes down to it, be just super supportive.
Yeah.
For a lot, especially now, we're seeing so many girls that are coming into wrestling that didn't have any family members that wrestled.
Right.
They're first generation wrestlers.
Yeah.
And you've got dad that was a basketball player,
Right.
mom was a ballet dancer, and they're like, we don't know
What's going
what
on?
is going on.
Yeah.
My daughter wants to wrestle, and
Yeah. Right.
and I think communication is so key.
Right.
And as a coach, you can have a lot of communication, and if it's received or if it isn't,
Yeah.
but also I think we're still at the stage where parents have this still has this cliche and this thing about girls wrestling,
Yeah.
that it's icky, or to me, I think the hardest part as well, it's just like the boys.
Oh,
Because the
yeah.
boys practice a lot different than the
Yeah.
girls,
Right.
and it's a whole
They
different
learn
they
different.
learn
Yeah.
different, there's so much different things, but they're still stuck on, well, especially if you have a dad that wrestled, "Oh, my
Yeah.
daughter is gonna wrestle because I remember in,
Yeah. Right.
1998, or whatever it
Yeah.
was," and so,
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important as a parent. I loved when we were able to have more of a father-daughter relationship where
yeah,
you were affirming what I was doing, where you were building me up and making me feel like regardless of how you do on the mat,
yeah,
regardless of those wins and losses, I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to support you. I'm still going to be in your corner. I'm still going to keep showing up.
yeah.
And yeah, you guys always showed up to everything. I mean, you are our biggest supporters, and I think that as a parent, that's the type of parent I want to be. I want to find a coach that I can trust to be able to support my children and coach them in the way that I would, hope that they're getting the best out of them, best technique or whatever it is. And if we have to kind of bounce around to figure out where that is, great. But then I just want to be a parent that supports, loves, encourages, uplifts, and can be a sounding board if they want to come and talk to me, and if they want to ask me questions. at that point I can give them feedback.
Yeah.
But if they're not asking for feedback, then it's more, how can I support you?
And I think I've said for a long time, and I think it's, I learned this a long time ago when Tanner was younger, is I think really the best thing you can do as a parent, especially if you're an uber competitive parent like me,
Right.
put your arms around them, say, I love you and I'm proud of you, and walk away.
Yeah.
Like by the time you were 14, you'd made a couple of world teams.
Right.
Was I going to tell you not to get put in a half Nelson? You were going to look at me like, yeah, no kidding, Dad. I didn't think of that one. Like, I mean,
Thanks.
yeah, thanks. Wow,
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
a new one.
Iconic.
Yeah, it was, you really are, you're either the cushion or the one that pushes them, because kids will take the path of least resistance.
Right.
They will say, oh, I don't want to get up this morning.
Yeah.
It's as hard on parents to, hey, oh, I got to get up at 6:00 and I have to take Susie to practice.
Right.
I mean, it's hard on parents, right?
Sure.
And I see a lot that parents just don't want to put that effort. So you have girls that could be really successful, they showed up,
Yeah.
but parents aren't willing to put in the work too.
Right.
And people, I think we're seeing, at least sometimes we're seeing that parents want to grow children and not raise children. And
Yeah.
so, there's a difference there.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. I think that's so great. I think we could, have multiple podcasts. I'm gonna have to have you back on, and there's so many things that we could keep chatting about. And I just think you have so much knowledge. And I think for you, one thing that I really admire is that you're able to look yourself in the mirror and see, where you went wrong, and admit where you went wrong, and figure out how to be better as a parent, as a coach. And I admire that about you. I think you're a great dad and a great coach. And I want to end with the question of maybe like a fun kind of memory of, looking back on all the years of me wrestling. What was maybe a moment that you're never going to forget that was like, wow, that was whatever?
Oh, I think there's a couple that stand out. I think one of my favorite memories was when you made your first cadet world team.
Yeah.
And the girl you were competing went running up to you and says, will you go to the bathroom with me?
Oh,
because
yeah.
she didn't. And so you went to the bathroom, and then you end up winning. And then I drove 18 hours. I was in such a high after you made the world team that I drove from Dallas, Texas, straight through all the way. Like my arms hurt because I was like stuck in this steering wheel for 18 hours. Oh, I was pumped. Yeah. I didn't need any
energy drinks.
Yeah. I think there's two ones that are kind of funny. One was you were wrestling at the Salt Lakes, and it happened the same tournament. It was the Salt Lake Slam. So obviously you're the only girl in that division, and you're wrestling.
This was when I was younger.
Yeah, this is when you were younger.
Probably elementary age.
Yeah, I think you were about 12.
Okay.
So you were, yeah. And so kind of where you were like really just hitting your stride, right?
Yeah.
And you were wrestling. I think it was like one of the California state champions.
Okay.
And the first round goes like, I think he took you down, and that was it. And I think it was 2-0.
Mm-hmm.
So then obviously it's their choice. They pick down, right?
Yeah.
And you just proceed to just leg ride him to death, right? And he can't get out. And Dad is this really big guy.
Yeah.
And of course they're playing music, right?
Sure.
And all of a sudden he yells, "You're getting held down by a girl." At the same time, the music stopped, and he just like, and then he was like looking around, and everybody's like looking over, like,
That's hilarious.
So that was kind of funny. And I think the same
one moment for me.
It was kind of funny moment. And then you were on the backside, you were going for 5th and 6th. And you went to go out, and the kid was like, saw that it was a girl.
Oh, yeah.
And he starts like laughing, and he puts his hands up and goes to his mom, like, And so I remember you go over, and the whistle blows, and you ankle pick him like right off the bat. And he falls over, and he starts trying to crawl away. And I remember you grabbing him and pulling him back in.
No way.
Yeah. And that was one of those ones that was really funny.
It was a highlight.
That was a highlight. I think the one other that just kind of funny one was when you were a freshman.
Uh-huh.
And so we had a lot of high school kids that really didn't know who you were.
Right.
And what you'd done.
Yeah.
And we were at the Best of the West.
Mm-hmm.
And you were the first girl to place there, right?
Yeah.
And
it was cool.
So you go out there, and at that time you had to wear the bonnet, right?
Oh,
and
the
so
hairnet.
and so you were at the point where if
girls don't know how lucky they are
yes,
that they do not have to wear a hairnet.
Oh yeah,
because every time that thing would fall off, we'd have to stop wrestling and put it back on, and we had to. Yeah, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah,
yep.
But you had your beautiful blonde hair; it was all tucked in, and you beat this kid. And I remember you always you'd unstrap, and as they raise your hand, you would take off your headgear with your thing and your long blonde hair. Now at that time, from a distance, you couldn't really tell whether you were a girl or a guy.
Yeah.
You haven't started
I was
to develop.
A freshman. Yeah.
You were a freshman,
Yeah.
hadn't quite developed.
Right.
But I remember when you took it off, you could definitely tell you were a girl.
Yeah.
And I remember the stands literally went, like that's a girl. That's a girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I remember that.
Yeah. I think that same time was some mom was up there, goes, I can't believe girls are, and she starts going off.
Oh.
And Misty O'Connor.
Yep.
Came down and just started hammering her.
Really?
Oh yeah, she packed her stuff and walked right out.
Wow.
Because you had trained with her son.
Yep.
And so she was a huge advocate.
Yeah.
And
that was very kind of her to
yeah,
come
it was very
down
kind.
and
I think
put that lady.
I think we had a lot of those. We had some parents that weren't
very supportive. But
no, we had, and I say all the time that I think that was for me one of the biggest surprising things of girls wrestling.
Yeah.
It was the worst things ever said to you came from moms.
Yeah, it was.
And dads would just stay in the corner and be bent over. You could tell what they were saying if they had to wrestle. But moms, they had no filter.
Oh yeah.
They'd come and call you all sorts of names and do things like that. And so that was always one that I was like, wow, really?
Yeah.
Like really?
Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
You'd think women would support women in that area.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone's harder on women than other women.
Oh,
and I think girls, and I've seen that through the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, man, we could just keep going. We could just
lots of stories. I definitely have lots of stories.
I'll have to have you back on, and we'll have to go through some of those fun stories. Yeah, we can do a part 2. But thank you so much for being on.
Thank you. This was great. I love this. This is so great.
Well, I really hope that this can be something that not only girls can learn from, but parents, coaches, that this can be a resource, just because I really, I feel like there's not a lot of resources out there that that people can really learn from high-level women, high-level coaches, and learn from people's mistakes. And so I really hope this can be a podcast that people can listen to and can hear awesome stories, funny stories, and take something away from it. So thank you again, and I love you. Thanks for being a great dad.
Love you.